coming up on Creating North of 55.
What do you think is the future for our region, our community in terms of art? Like, where do you see us going in the future?
It will only continue to get better. People crave it. And I actually had somebody ask me recently, why does Grande Prairie produce so many amazing artists in so many diverse ways? And as odd as this sounds, but I think it's very real, is our winters are so long and dark that in order to keep our sanity and in order to keep doing something, we find creative outlets over the winters that we can take part in that make us feel good, be it music, be it in creating art, creating something, basically a bridge to get us to spring. So it's over those winter months that people seek to be creative. And so there's a certain incubation there that being trapped in a house makes you seek out these. And I think that's why.
Yeah, that's interesting to think about because it is like you go to work, it's dark. You go home, it's dark. And it's like, where do you find the light? Like, where do you find that creative energy? Welcome back to another episode of Creating North of 55 podcast. I'm your host, Mariah Braun, and with me today, I've got sculptor and art gallery owner, Grant Berg of Grant Berg Gallery. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you.
And I would love to just kind of get into a little bit of our history, like how we know each other. He was my boss at Today FM. And you knew me even before that, though, right?
That is so sweet, and I'm so glad that you reminded me of that because I wouldn't have put two and two together. So it is correct. I did hire Mariah at Today FM, and actually we had to fight to get her because I saw amazing potential. She accepted another job at the same time, but we were determined, and we brought her on board. But our history goes back to when, how old would you have been? 8-ish?
Probably even younger, to be honest. Yeah, so maybe 6. I don't know.
So it was at a different radio station that I worked at, CJXX Big Country.
Yeah.
And I loved the janitor, Iris, would come in and just a wonderful lady, great to visit with. And every once in a while, she would bring in this cute little boy and this cute little girl, and they were just adorable. But again, I didn't put two and two together.
So Iris is my grandma. So I was like hanging out at a radio station when I was really young, and Grant had no idea. I think it was like a mug that my grandma gave me that kind of spurred this. I don't know. Like, I don't know when we came to discover this exactly, but yeah, I think it's pretty cool, right?
It's
to see the progression.
Cool, yeah. Where we've crossed paths 3 different times.
Yeah.
Back then is at CJXX and then later at Today FM. And now both of us have left radio specifically and are doing our own creative industries.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, Today FM was one of my first marketing gigs, and I know just from working there, I learned so much. There was so many takeaways that you provided me that I continue to use today in my career. And I know that one moment I would love to just share is like you got the station a camera, and it was just as simple as just like putting it on my desk. And like that was it. You just like let me go for it. I created all these video packages to sell to clients. And to be honest, that's what really gave me the courage to kind of build a business in the first place, because I had those skills. I already went out and did them. So I just wanted to thank you so much for that, because it was just a small moment, but it was really, really big for me.
Well, thank you, Mariah. I'm flattered. So my attitude has always been, and again, I've worked for good bosses and I've worked for bad bosses. And what I always believe is identify talent and empower them and give them the right tools and then get out of the way.
Yeah.
And again, when you're hiring the right people, you can do that. And the sky's the limit. And you're proving me right.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate all of that encouragement because, yeah, like I said, I don't think I'd be where I'm at without it. So,
oh, thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you have a box of tissues here?
Oh, yeah, yeah. No, Let me get David.
I'm okay. Oh, you're so sweet.
I'm so gullible too. It's so good. And you know that. But what I'd love to dig into a little bit more with you, David's actually getting, I know. David actually went to go get Grant a tissue after I realized I was being a little bit gullible. But what I would really love to dig into, which might require a Kleenex or two, is how did you really start as an artist? Like, how did you know that you wanted to be an artist? And where did that spark come from?
I am going to say that I was born with that.
Oh.
When I was young, very young, I loved to draw. And me and my brother and sister would every weekend, every Saturday, Sunday, we would draw. And we would draw cartoon characters. And at the time when we were young, there were such things as newspapers with a comic book section. And the Edmonton Sun would allow kids to submit their drawings, and then they would run one on the cover of the Saturday cartoon section. And so me, my brother, and sister every week would draw a number of cartoons and send them in, and not once over I don't know how many years did we ever get accepted. And I hate to say this to anybody that actually got theirs on there, but I honestly think we were too good.
Oh, okay. They didn't want to show off the great talent of the kids.
Well, they were wondering if it was traced or something,
Oh, okay.
but it was great. And I thank my mom for supporting that, because what she would do is get them all in an envelope and mail them in that week. And we did that week after week. For me as a sculptor, though, I've always known that I have an artistic soul. And I honestly believe that everybody on earth has an artistic talent. Some people are fortunate enough to discover what it is. Many don't. But for me, I could draw, I could paint, and I could do a lot of things, but not on a superior level. But when I started doing sculpture, there was magic that happened. And what it was, in this is my easy interpretation, is I could take something three-dimensional, and even an idea in some cases, the intangible. Like I could take the wind and do a stone sculpture of the wind, or the sun, a number of things, and just see them differently through sculpture. But what I can't do is I can't take something like a landscape that is 5 miles deep with a mountain in the back and make it flat. My brain doesn't translate depth into flat. It likes to see the depth and retranslate that through another form of depth. And so for sculpture, that's where my mind goes. But with that, some people are poets. Some people can do music. Some people, my wife, for example, I call her a culinary artist. So she isn't into paintings and stuff like that. But she can make amazing meals out of thin air. And even our son used to ask her, "Did you invent that one, Mom?" And yes. "Did you invent this one, Mom?" Yes. And he was always blown away at how amazing she could cook and bring different foods together and spices and make an exceptional meal. But that's her art.
Beautiful. I love that. Like capturing the wind and the sun through sculpture is so interesting to me. And if you haven't checked out his gallery yet, definitely go in. There's some of his pieces in there, right? And then other ones you might not have like in gallery, right?
Yeah, there's some on the website.
Okay.
I need to do a better job of that, but...
Artists, we're bad at marketing ourselves, right?
Well, I guess I do it in a number of different ways, and I take on a lot of stuff, and I know that this is wrong. So I was going to say right or wrong, but I know this is wrong. But I'm always working ahead to the next thing and not looking at the rearview mirror and saying, hey, I need to put this in the current, because it's in the past already, but I'm always excited about what's next and always working on what's next, and that doesn't always leave time for, again, updating old pieces on a website.
Yeah, and kind of going back to your roots in radio, like how did you go from being like radio personality to wanting to own your own gallery? Like that just seems like a big jump to me.
And it wasn't really. Okay. So again, I started out working overnight radio in Peace River back in around 1988. And then over the course of 2.5 years, worked my way up to becoming the music director, midday host. But actually where I truly started was in TV in Edmonton. So when I was going to broadcast school.
Okay.
I applied for a job and got it. And I'll actually tell this little 3-minute story-ish.
Sure. Yeah, that's what I want.
So we didn't have cable TV. We grew up in a small town, didn't have cable TV, just wasn't what we did. We had 3 channels near Edmonton, and I was actually living in a curling rink. In high school, I did ice and my uncle ran a curling rink in Edmonton, and my cousin lived in it. So when I went to Edmonton, they said, "Hey, come do ice with us, and you get to live for free." Well, being a student, that's perfect. So anyway, my cousin moved out and to be with his girlfriend, so it's just me in there. And one night, the ice plant went down, and the ice melted.
Oh.
Yeah, and that wasn't my job. I was just there to, do the pebbling and stuff like that. But so anyway, they needed a fall guy, and it wasn't fair for my cousin to take it. So yeah, I'll take the bullet and go rent an apartment. So I was with a buddy in high school, and first time in my life I have cable TV. I turn it on, and there's a Doors music video, and I love music. And so I'm watching this Doors music video, and this girl comes on after the video and said, "That was the Doors. Loved me 2 times, not once, but twice." And I thought, okay, I could do better than that. So I applied, and literally the next week I was hosting that show.
Oh my goodness.
So
I can do better than that. Hello?
Yeah. Yeah, so that's how I got into TV. And it was a show called Swap Shop. So people would phone in and sell their furniture and whatever. But instead of commercials, we played music videos. And back then, I thought that's going to be my career to becoming a VJ.
Okay.
But I did all kinds of fun stuff outside of that. So I did cameras for hockey games. I did cameras for CRTC hearings. One of the highlights, though, was working in the Alberta legislature. So initially I started off doing cameras on the floor. And so as an MLA would stand up or the premier would stand up to speak, it was my job to be on the cameras and frame the shot. And so then from there I got bumped up into the studio, and I did what was called font. So when an MLA stood up, I had to push the right button for the right guy so that when he stood up, the name come across the screen.
Yeah.
And then from there, I actually was producing Question Period. I was 19 years old. So that was a real early career highlight, was producing Question Period at the Alberta legislature.
Okay, I don't think you've ever told me that.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
So that's where I've always been a big fan of social studies. But watching the dynamics on the floor, actually being on the floor at the Alberta legislature, really intrigued me into the political world and fascinated me. So that was a lot of fun being down there and walking through the building afterwards. And you see somebody on TV, but you see a totally different personality as soon as the cameras are away. And so there was a few lessons in there. And but it was a wonderful period. But the thing was that I wasn't a big fan of TV. I found there was a lot of hurry up and wait. And my love for music drew me back to radio. And even, they paid me well. It wasn't always consistent hours. But again, this is 1987, and they were paying me $20 an hour.
Okay, that's pretty good.
That was really good. But I need music every single day in my life. And so, again, another funny little story, but my parents met in Peace River, even though neither one is from Peace River, but Mom had a job there and Dad had a job there, and that's where they met. And so when I said that I was going to get into radio, they said, "Oh, go anywhere, but do not go to that radio station in Peace River. It's the worst station in the world." So I graduate from broadcast school, and I'm applying to every radio station everywhere in Western Canada. The only one that would hire me was the one that my parents said was the worst radio station in the world. But you know what? They gave me a chance, and it was a lot of fun. I still have amazing close friends from that period, and just so much fun. It could have been a TV show like WKRP, and there are so many stories from there. And actually, a lot of Alberta's top broadcasters all got their starts there. So it was a good training ground, and you could make mistakes, and you could have fun. And did that for 2.5 years before I came to Grande Prairie. And and did that and married a local girl, and here I am 34 years later.
Yeah. So you moved from what was Big Country at the time, right? Over to being general manager of Today FM. Then you decided to open your gallery, right? You left us. You broke up with us, unfortunately.
Well, so there's another story in there. I'm convinced that I would have been fired 2 weeks later.
Oh, okay.
And only because I didn't feel that I was worthy of being fired. But at the time, I'd had, at that point, 29 years of experience. And the president of the company had about 27 years worth of experience. And we didn't always agree on how to treat customers.
Okay.
I treat my customers like their friends.
Yep.
And not like their customers. And so we had a few clashes around personality, but with that, again, to tie up that little bit of a story, is I gave my 2 weeks notice. It was March 4th, and there was some symbolism behind that because March 4th means move forward.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So that's when I gave my notice. But literally, so I gave 2 weeks, and they said, Grant, you can go home today. That's fine. And they said, pack up your stuff. And I opened up the drawer. It was already empty. I'd already got my stuff out.
Just the point of opening it up, right?
But 2 weeks later, just about every single general manager within the chain that had the same amount of experience that I did, there was 4 of them, all got fired 2 weeks later. And I have no doubt that I would have been one of those, but I got to choose my own fate. I didn't get a package, but I got to choose my own fate. But to tie that back, when I was the general manager of Today FM, at 19 years old, that was my dream, to be the general manager of a young, fun, hip radio station. And I got to achieve that. But at the time, what did 48-year-old Grant want? 19-year-old Grant got his dream, but what did 48-year-old Grant want? And that wasn't it. And so I'd been heavily involved with arts. My parents, grandparents, all had set up their own businesses. And I thought, okay, it's time for me to make way and do something on my own. But I needed, having been in marketing and advertising for a lot of years. I saw so many businesses die because Walmart or Costco brings one shelf or one aisle into their store, and suddenly these guys are crushed. So I needed to find an industry that the Walmarts and Costcos couldn't compete with me, and that is personally curated original art. Each artist only has so much capacity to produce original work. And with that, I felt I had an advantage because it was too small and too refined for a box store.
Yeah, beautiful. And you open it up right downtown, not far from the studio here. And yeah, you moved over to the 214 place now.
Yeah.
And you have 100% Canadian artists, right?
It is 100% Canadian. So when I opened, I actually was bringing in some amazing artists. I could think of one from Japan that I loved, and it was more fashion sketches. But at the time, I'd brought in one of Disney's top artists and had reached out to him directly and had probably 20 of his drawings in my gallery. And I know that I was the only gallery in the world with his originals. And so that was kind of cool.
That's very cool.
And now he heads up an animation division at an entirely different company, but I won't name drop, but you've watched their movies.
Cool. That's cool.
And another one was Greg Hildebrand, and I had the pleasure of meeting Greg a couple times. He was actually involved with the Barrett-Jackson auction. I went to that twice, and I was down there with my buddy who was looking to buy a car, and I love the cars, but hey, there's this really cool artist. So I got chatting with him. And so Greg and his twin brother, Tim, drew and painted the original Star Wars poster in 1977. And he's done so many album covers and a lot of artwork that, again, you would know, but you have no idea who did it. And so I bought a number of sketches from him. Now, his paintings sell for $10,000, $20,000. And what I like to do as a collector, but also now in my gallery from time to time, if I love an artist and I can't afford the painting and they want to sell prints, but I actually go to them and say, I want your sketch. I want the original idea that led to the poster that was the print. And so what I would do is approach artists and buy their sketches. And that's what I did with Greg, is I bought a number of his sketches. And so, it was amazing. And the 1% or less than 1% of people that recognized what that was, their minds were blown. But for the under 99% of the people, it was nothing. It was irrelevant. And so rather than fighting customs and shipping and all of that stuff, I just decided to go all Canadian. And so that's where we're at now.
Beautiful. And the artwork is incredible, guys. Seriously, if you have not been there, check it out. You've got to go. And so I'd love to kind of dig deeper into your inspiration again a little bit. And I know you've brought it up to me before, how your career, your life as a whole, there's always been these themes of art and music.
Yeah.
And I'd love to just hear your interpretation of that.
Yeah, it is my story. And again, I believe that we all have hero or villain origin stories. And so with my story around art and music, it starts when I was 14 years old. I was going to go to a Boy Scout camp, and in order to go, you had to pass a physical. Well, I failed the physical. They found some issues with one of my kidneys. They said it was a quick fix, and I'd be out of the hospital in 3 or 4 days, and I was. The problem is the kidney had burst. They'd found actually 5 gallons of blood and urine in my body when they did the second surgery, and I was only 14 years old. So what happened over the course of a year and 4 days is I had 6 major surgeries, each one worse than the last one. And at surgery number 4, they took my kidney out because it had blown up twice. It was bad. And so surgery 4, they take my kidney out and they put me essentially in a drug-induced coma. So I'm laying in my hospital bed, and my bed thankfully backed onto what was called the teen room. And it had a little pool table, and you could play games, and they had a stereo in there that was really nice. And they would turn it on at 8 a.m. and turn it off at 10 p.m. And I could hear the music through the wall. So even though to everybody walking in, I was in a coma, mentally I was awake and aware of everything happening in the room, who was in there, what they were saying. And I latched onto that music coming through the wall, and I rode that like a roller coaster in the night, the highs, the lows, the turns, and my soul rode that music roller coaster in what could have been the most terrifying, darkest moments of my life. It latched onto music, and words don't describe the beauty of understanding music on that depth. So then later, when I was able to walk, I would walk the hallways, and they had artwork on the walls. And I would stare at that painting, and I would get lost in it. And it took me somewhere else. So I would understand, like I'd look at each breath or brush stroke. I would look at the color. I would look at the theme, the palette. And I would get lost in that. It was a window to somewhere else. It wasn't my situation. It was another situation. And one through an artist's eyes and one through an artist's soul. And come to a greater understanding of something else. And it took me away from my reality. And then I would go down the hall, and I covered, this is at the U of A hospital in Edmonton, but I basically covered my floor. Then I went to every floor in the hospital, maternity, wherever. Didn't matter. But because I was in there so long, I looked at their art and really got into it in a really deep way. For surgery number 5, so after they took my kidney out, I deteriorated to the point where it was bad. I was 14, 15 years old. I weighed 75 pounds. And the painkillers that they were giving me would actually paralyze it. They would put it in my legs, and it would paralyze that leg for the day. But they wanted me to get up and walk. And I couldn't walk, because they were giving me these every 4 hours. So you put it in one leg one time, and then the next leg 4 hours later, neither leg worked.
Sounds horrible.
Yeah. And so I just said, okay, today we're doing this leg, tomorrow we'll do this one. And so that way I could kind of drag my leg around and look at art. But things were getting bad, desperately bad. And so going into surgery number 5, the doctors weren't sure if I would survive it. So I'm on the stretcher going into OR, and I actually said goodbye to my family because we didn't know if I was going to live through the day. During that operation, I woke up on the operating table. Mentally again.
Oh.
So I'm laying there, and I got to let the doctors know I'm awake.
That sounds like a horror movie, Grant.
Yep. And so I try to wiggle my foot. Hey, I'm awake. And my foot doesn't move. So then I try to move my hand to wave, hey, I'm awake. Doesn't work. Actually, Grant, just tell them that you're awake. So I try to talk, and I can't talk. And I'm laying there, and actually now I'm starting to panic. And I thought, Grant, open your eyes. How heavy are your eyelids? Open your eyes. And they wouldn't open. And at that moment, I felt my jaw get pulled down, something shoved down my throat. And I thought, they're trying to revive me. This is it. This is the end. And as I laid there, I thought, Grant, you fought an amazing fight. It's time to go.
Whoa.
When I woke up in recovery, I can't tell you how shocked I was.
No doubt.
And so with that, there's a greater appreciation for life coming out of that situation because I thought I had none left. And so now with everything that I do, I want to embrace life. I want to do everything I can in the time that I have, because I don't know how much time any of us has. And so there's an appreciation for life and a passion for life that has driven me since I've been 14 and 15 years old.
And now you're sharing that passion through the sculpture that you create and the art gallery that you have.
Yeah.
How beautiful.
This didn't occur to me, honestly, till I was probably in my 30s. And at that point, again, I'm volunteering for a number of artistic boards and organizations, like the Art Gallery of Grande Prairie, Alberta's second largest public art gallery. I was the chair during construction of that. Sat on the board for the Alberta Society of Artists, and have been volunteering for a number of things that improve the quality of life wherever I've lived. But again, it occurred to me at one point that my entire adult life has been to deliver the beauty of art and music to the people of Grande Prairie. 29 years through radio and the last 9 years through owning a gallery. Because what could have been and should have been the darkest moments of my life, I actually look back with wonder and affection at the music and the art that was there and the appreciation for life. And so it wasn't by design, it was more like fluke or instinct that I'm just naturally drawn to areas that I find beauty in. And so that's, again, my careers in radio and in art.
Wow, what an incredible journey it's been for you, hey?
And again, what I also love is being part of your story. And we had an excellent team at Today FM. And you look back at some of the players, and I'll name drop Erica for one, is
Sure.
one, and some of the
Justine.
announcers. Yes.
Yeah.
They're all doing amazing. Like, that was such a great team, and I am part of their stories. And that's the same thing with the artists in my gallery that I promote, elevate, and try to get on a bigger platform. I'm part of their stories too. And to me, that's a huge reward, because I love being part of stories. There's so many great players in mine and influential people that if I can have that role in someone else's life, I'm happy to.
Yeah, and that's what I love about your gallery. Anytime I walk in there, I'm going to say hi or something like that, there might be somebody else admiring the art and you are going up to them. You're in the middle of a story usually. You're telling the story of the piece, which I think is really cool. I don't know if every gallery owner does that, but it definitely brings a different element to your store, your gallery.
Well, thank you. So what I simply do is what I crave in an art gallery, because I go to art galleries anytime I travel. 99% of the time, I just go in as a person. I go out of my way not to say who I am or what I do, because I just want to be a guy and appreciate art again. Because if I start bringing up that I'm an artist or a gallery, either eyes roll or it turns into a 2-hour conversation. I just want to be there to, again, appreciate art as I always have. And I've been to galleries where you walk in and it's only one artist on the wall. And if you don't engage with that artist, you're gone. You might as well just turn around and leave. Or there have been some that I have been specifically and absolutely ignored as though I don't exist or I'm less than I exist. So I've also learned lessons on how to treat customers. And there was one gallery down in Scottsdale. I used to go back in to see how they would work me because they were amazing. And I loved it. Like, I could learn so much from them until I think they finally caught on. But
training.
Yeah. But they
Free
were
training.
that good. Yeah. For what it's worth, it's called Gallery Andrea in Scottsdale.
Cool. I love it.
And so that's what I want to do in my gallery. I want to engage with people. And what I do, rather than having one artist, is I'll put 3 or 4 paintings up from all of our artists. So you can kind of get a feel for what that artist is. And if you want to see more, I can bring more out. But I also read body language. So when people come in, we have roughly 55 artists. There's always about 40 on the walls at any given time. So we're always changing it, keeping it fresh. And people can go by and look and look and look. But when they stop and lean in, that's my cue to tell them the story. And the thing that I love is every one of my artists has a story. And I love to tell that. And that's part of the beauty of what art is an artist will see something. And I'll use landscape, for example. But you see a landscape. Now, to go and repaint that like a photograph takes shocking talent that I could not imagine. But what I love is, and I'll use Steve Coffey as an example. We call him the Canadian Van Gogh in the gallery, but I'm not the only one that does that. It's very loose, and it is a very Canadian landscape style of Van Gogh. But what Steve does is he'll see the Canadian prairie and the Canadian prairie sky, and he will take that scene through his eyes, put it through his soul. He's also a musician with about 12 CDs out. Put it through his soul and reproduce it in a way that is unique to him and his experience. And he sees the beauty and the feel of the Canadian landscape. So to me, with a lot of art, it isn't what you see, it's about making you feel. And again, Vincent van Gogh was the best at it. And I've seen Van Gogh, and actually that was influential in my life, seeing my first Van Gogh, because it stopped me in my tracks without even knowing who the artist was. And Steve has that ability. And all of our artists, when I bring them in, what is my emotional reaction to it? Yes. Is it aesthetically pleasing? Yes. But it also has to have an underlying emotion. And not all artists have that yet. And again, as a comedian, they call it finding your voice. But for an artist, again, they find their voice, and then there's an emotional reaction when you look at that. And that's what I really want, because, again, in my darkest times, I had that emotional reaction to that artwork that brought me peace and calm.
Yeah, and you're looking to do that even more, bringing that emotional piece into it by doing a few experience at your gallery, right? Some upcoming experiences, something new?
Yeah, I'm actually developing 4 different things. So quite by accident, I discovered that my gallery is a tourist stop. Now, I'm a gallery nerd. When I travel somewhere, I go to all the galleries. That's just what I do. And so exploring art is important to me. So I use TripAdvisor when I travel. So right away I get on TripAdvisor, I throw a couple pictures up, a little profile, and off we go. And I don't really think about it. And then somebody goes, "Hey, you're the number one thing to do in Grande Prairie on TripAdvisor." Really? I had no idea. And then I go on and I look, and yeah, there it is. So throw on some more pictures. I might as well feed this a little bit. At one point, my gallery in Grande Prairie was the highest rated commercial art gallery in all of Alberta. So rated higher than any in Banff, Jasper, Canmore, Calgary, or Edmonton. I lost that during COVID and have never recovered. But at one point, it was amazing to see. And so I've really been aware of the tourism angle. So with Grande Prairie Regional Tourism, we're a member. Indigenous Tourism Alberta and Indigenous Tourism Canada. And for what it's worth, I am Indigenous. I'm Métis. And so those two organizations have been so amazing. And I'll give full credit to Indigenous Tourism Alberta through grants during COVID. If I didn't have access to those, I don't even know if the gallery would be open today.
Wow.
They were so instrumental in seeing us to the other side. But they're also great partners. And so through Indigenous Tourism Canada, there's a program that I'm working on, and it is to develop tours in the gallery. And so I'm working on 3 stories. One of them is about 6 or 7 years old. I wanted to write a children's story inspired by the character of my grandma, who I grew up very close to. So the first 4 years of my life, we either lived near or on my grandparents' farm. Grandpa was a Scottish trapper who came from Scotland, actually had trapping license number 2 in Alberta, and my grandma was Cree Métis. And so we lived with them on the shores of Lac La Biche Lake. Grandpa passed away, but we moved to Tofield, Alberta, so that Dad could work in Edmonton closer to where there was work. And after Grandpa passed away, Grandma sold the farm and actually moved to Tofield. My mom was the baby of 8, so 8 of 8. And me being the oldest son, it was my job to look after Grandma's house and her yard. And we did so many things together. We did crafts, we did stuff. And she would take them to the farmer's market and sell it. And that was part of her income. But I just grew up so close to my grandma. And she was one of my best friends growing up. And I know I was one of her best friends. We were so amazingly close. So for me to grow up near her was, again, another one of life's wonderful things. And I know you grew up with your grandma and you value her.
Yeah.
Growing up with that, I always wanted to write a story about her amazing character. Not necessarily her story, because she didn't tell me stories of being a young Native girl. She just told me stories about being a little girl.
Yeah.
It wasn't labels, it was life. And her stories were fascinating. But I wanted to do a story about her character. And it wasn't coming to me, and it wasn't coming to me. And I quite literally, I'm sitting in Canmore, and I look up at the mountains, and I go, how did my ancestors get over those? And then the story started to come to me about a young girl who needed to get to the other side of the mountains to get medicine to save her grandma. And this story, as I'm sitting in my truck, starts to unravel in my mind. So I run in, I'm literally parked behind a bookstore, grab a book, buy a pen, and I sit in the truck and I start writing this free flow because I don't know where the story is coming from, but it's coming and I don't want to forget it. And so I've had it for a number of years, and I had one book done. And I'd applied actually for a couple grants to get it illustrated and was turned down for both. And I actually had a publishing deal pitched to me. There was some hiccups in it. I even had the contract, but there were a couple of problems, and they never did get back to me on those. But one of the big ones is they wanted me to sign over the characters, and I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
That's my grandma.
Yeah, pretty much, right?
Yeah. And so, but they did ask me to write 2 more books and create a series. So I actually did a road trip through southern Alberta and actually went to significant Indigenous places like Head Smashed In Buffalo Jump. I went to the Hoodoos. I went to Writing on Stone Provincial Park. And similarly, I would immerse myself in those spaces and let the story come and then just write it.
What do you think that was like being in those spaces that brought that energy for you?
Honestly, I think it's quite simply being in tune. It's finding the vibration of the frequency of the area, getting in tune with that, and then just hearing the story.
Beautiful. Okay. And so that's one of the tours.
Yeah, so that's one of them, and it's being illustrated now. And in fact, my illustrator just sent me 2 more images that I said, "Hey, can we edit these a little bit?" And so I just got those literally before I walked in. So I'm super excited. She's working on the second book. The other one is on my family tree, the Indigenous side. And that's fascinating. So my aunt is a genealogist. She lives down in Brook. She's in her 80s, sharp as ever. About 10, 15 years ago, she sent me the family tree and some stories, and I skimmed through it, but I didn't study it. And then I have another one of my uncles, my mom's brother. He's one of the family storytellers. So he's got the stories, and my aunt has the facts.
Good balance.
Yeah, and so what I wanted to do is take the family tree, take the stories, and build it into a tour. And as I'm going through the family tree, it's amazing what I'm discovering. And go through the stories again through my aunt and my uncle about Musum, which would have been my grandma's dad, who I met. He passed away when I was about 2. But again, just about land, for example. So he took the Métis script, got himself, I believe it was 2 quarters of land. But the government gave him land that was nowhere near their traditional areas. It was out in the middle of the prairie, not far from Camrose. But that was not where they existed. So to have a patch of land with no water and no significant way to make a real living in that time, the idea was that there was a couple of lawyers, and they either signed over the land, and that when the lawyer sold it, they would get the money, or again, sell it and you get the money. They never ever saw a cent. Not a cent. So eventually he did find some other land and built a house and built a barn. But back then, the Indian agents would come, and if they went to your place 2 times and you weren't there, then they considered the place abandoned. But what they were known to do is visit when they knew that they wouldn't be there. So, for example, if they were out hunting and they knew that they were out hunting, they would go and inspect. Okay, on this date we went there, nobody there. Well, one of my grandma's siblings, it was a difficult birth. So the family went to the hospital, but I had another relative that lived quite close to the hospital. And when the agent apparently caught wind that they were away, he went and did his second check, considered it abandoned, and moved another family in. So when they come home from the hospital with their baby to see somebody else living in their home, that's just how it worked. And I've used the same context. So say you have a house in Arizona, or you have a holiday property, and the police come by twice, that's not your home anymore. Someone else gets to live there now. That would be the same thing. And so what's amazing is how my mom, my uncle, my aunt talk about Musum as a very sophisticated and honorable gentleman, even though he had these hardships where he was robbed, stolen, again, building a house and building a barn in around 1910 in northern Alberta, only to have it given away because your wife was having a challenging childbirth. So there's some stories in there that I want to tell as part of these tours. And then finally, the last one, as part of this Indigenous Tourism Canada, is around my sculpture. So I've only got a couple in the gallery, but there's stories behind each one of them. But what I primarily do is I do trees, and no tree is perfect. And I use the tree as a metaphor. Many of them are shaped in the form of a female. So although it's a tree, it's got a face and it has a long dress. Sometimes some of the branches are arms. To me personally, that's my grandma. But when I sell it to somebody, I say that's Mother Nature in the tree. But in each case, it's usually on a rocky base to show that there's a solid foundation, but it's rock. It's not soil. It's not dirt. It's had a tough life. But also they're generally misshaped because it represents my ancestors and the hardships that they went through, much like Musa. The hardships that he endured in many ways made him stronger, more unique, and more beautiful. My grandma as well, born in 1910. The world changed in her lifetime. She passed away in 1997. And that is quite a swing for one person to go through. And so the trees represent the ancestors and the resilience that they had. And so there's stories behind that, but I've also got 5 public sculptures in and around the city of Grande Prairie that I tell about those stories, and people can go visit them as well. So although I don't have them in one spot, this video tour will explain each, and people can go visit. And then finally, through Indigenous Tourism Alberta, there's a program called the Six Senses. And so the Six Senses feel. And so in consultation with them, they want each provider to be unique to themselves. So again, there are people that do camping excursions, horseback, boats. What do I do as an art gallery? So we were just, again, having a similar conversation. So Grant, tell me your story. And I tell the story about the hospital, about music and art. And she goes, that's what you have to do. You have to do healing in this world, from an Indigenous standpoint, but also just help people discover the art of healing through art and the art of healing through music, like you did, because we all see art, we all hear music, but we don't always stop and appreciate it and understand it on the level that you do. So I think maybe the closest thing might be and in theory only, but might have the same results, say, of yoga or the same idea as a sound bath where you immerse yourself in the art. So I'll tell the story. I'll tell what to look for, the contexts, and what brought me into it, and then leave people with a painting that they can relate to and dive into it, but with music in the background to fully stimulate the 6 senses. And I think I've already been doing much of that. But one of the things that I chuckle at myself is, what does my gallery smell like? I have no idea other than maybe what I microwaved for lunch that day, and I don't want that.
Hopefully not broccoli, right?
Yeah, or fish. No fish in the microwave.
Yeah, we don't miss that part of office politics, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I've insulted people before. You're probably the type that microwaves fish at work. So anyway, that's the worst insult to anybody. But anyway, so there's another Indigenous company in Edmonton, and so I brought their products in, and they smell wonderful. And again, similar to her, she talks about her grandma taking her through the forest, and this is what this plant does for our medicine, and this is what this plant does for our medicine. So I brought that in to make my gallery smell beautiful, but also if somebody wants to, again, take that home, they could take the smell, they can find the sound, they can look at art, and a greater understanding of healing and our current times with so much confusion and frustration. I think there's a genuine demand for it. And as I keep reading, again, similar to what I'd mentioned before about how can I do something that the big US box stores can't compete against me, I see the same thing with AI. how can I develop something that AI can't compete with me on? AI can create amazing, beautiful things. All of it's stolen. I've even seen one AI painting, and I thought immediately, oh, that's this artist. And I look at it, and it was AI created. It was stolen from an artist, but it couldn't create anything new. It could only reproduce something that it had already seen. It can't produce human emotion and human connection. Maybe artificially you can buy into it for a bit, but it's not sincere, it's not genuine, it's not authentic. And when I look at what they say the next careers will be, the top 10 list, authenticity through art and experience is about number 5 or 6. And so I like to be ahead of that for that, because we already spend way too much time on our screens, and that's where AI is primarily presented. But if we can create that in an art gallery in an authentic way, again, I think there's opportunity there.
Yeah, I think that's what we forget around art and human-made experiences. Like, that's human to human. AI cannot replicate that. And oftentimes we're on these digital platforms because we want to connect with another human.
Ironically, yes.
And it has nothing to do with other stuff outside of that. It's usually, I want to connect with someone. I want to see somebody on Facebook. So we can't lose that human experience. Yeah. We really just can't.
And it's quite shallow in many ways too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So those tours that you're doing, when can people experience those?
I'm hoping by the end of May, everything will be done.
Okay, awesome. So do we have to register for that?
Yeah, we're actually working this week. When we had our website built, there's a component built in the back where people can buy tickets to come see these or experience them. Mm-hmm. And so we're getting the people that built the website to go into the back end and coach us on how to activate that and properly fill it.
Okay. So that'll be up soon. So check out grantberggallery.com.
Yep.
And that'll eventually be up so that you can sign up for those great tours at the end of May. I'm looking forward to those tours, by the way, so I can't wait to sign up myself. But my next question for you is around city council, because you're currently a city councilman, right?
I am. As I like to joke, I wear many hats. None of them cover my bald spot.
Oh, goodness.
So I am on city council as well. And again, that goes back to, learning about politics at the legislature. But I've always volunteered for a number of organizations, always with the goal of improving quality of life. And when I moved to Grande Prairie in 1991, I had high expectations. And to be honest, there wasn't a lot for a young guy to do. Me and another friend, we didn't drink, but we still had to go to the bars because that's all there was. And we would listen to the music and someone else could DJ. And this literally happened where one day I was frustrated. I'm looking in the mirror, getting ready in the morning, I go, somebody's got to do something. And I thought, Grant, you do something. Yeah. When I travel, I see amazing things in amazing places that people had the foresight 50, 100, 200 years ago to build. And thanks to them, I get to experience it today. And so what I wanted to do was get involved with organizations that were builders and were doing positive things to improve the quality of life. So I've been volunteered for a handful of organizations over time that did exactly that. And I love being part of a group where I can move the needle. I've also volunteered for very large organizations where I felt lost, directionless, and that I wasn't moving the needle. And if I left, it would survive perfectly fine without me. So I wanted to find organizations and groups that needed me. And so I'd actually left all of my volunteer roles, and this was only for about a month or two, just to step back and reevaluate and find my new direction, because I felt that I'd lost that direction. And it was at that point the city elections were coming up. I ran in the provincial election, had a great experience. A lot of good things come from it. Clearly didn't win, but it was all positive. But through that, I probably had about 10 people approach me saying, Grant, you need to run for city council. And I just dismissed them all without even thought. Just no, no. And then there was another person that approached me and said, hey, Grant, this was probably 11 or 12. You need to run for city council. No. How come? I said, well, because I want to volunteer for organizations that improve the culture and the way of life here in Grande Prairie and where I can have impact and move the needle. And she said, but you could do that from a seat in City Hall better than any organization. And damn, you're right.
They got a point. They do have a point there.
So anyway, I did run and clearly got on and quite flatteringly, where I feel incumbents always have the advantage, and rightly so. But there were 19 people that ran for city council, and the top 8 got in, and I finished second. So I was quite happy with that.
That's awesome. And so there's a new election coming up this fall.
This October, yep.
And so are you going to run?
Oh, absolutely. My intention, if I was fortunate enough to get elected to city council, that I would run for 2 terms, because what I want to achieve can't be done in 4 years.
Yeah, you kind of start off on council, you're learning a lot. There's probably like a huge mountain of learning there.
There is,
Then you get on to stuff, right?
But there's also, as part of that learning, there's also foundational things that you have to understand, where timing is so critical, where, there's some projects, you push them too soon, they trip and fall, and then next thing you know, 8 years has gone by because nobody wants to deal with it after it's already failed and still fresh in everyone's memory. So timing is important, and context is important. Because although this might be something that I want, the city may have greater needs, and understanding those greater needs is critical. And having the right people in place too, so that when I do push for these things, that it's in a good spot and has a higher percentage chance of success. Doesn't guarantee success, but it also doesn't guarantee failure, where if you push it too soon, failure is almost guaranteed.
Yeah, that would be a really tough balance. And I admire anyone that steps up to the plate, but I'm really happy to see someone like yourself standing up for the arts community, because it's a big passion of mine. Through this podcast, I want to just showcase all the great talent in our region and more. But I think it's really important for our community to have that culture and have an art scene, to be honest.
And we, as a region, do exceptionally well. The artists in my gallery are amazing and are finally starting to get recognized outside the region. And again, I'll name drop. Emily Lozeron's been featured in a couple of U.S. magazines, and she's from the area. Suzanne Sanbo, just a few years ago, Canadian Federation of Artists had a show in Vancouver. 500 artists applied. She finished first. And that's from across Canada, and that's somebody here in our region. And there's a number of other artists that are developing at rapid paces that I know are going to find amazing success. But one of the things that I found in music, too, that probably feeds why I am all for developing artists, with Emerson Drive, when I was working at CJXX, this was just a high school band. And with Brad Mates was the lead singer. And I remember there was, at the time, one of Canada's top country singers was in town. And he said, hey, let's go out tonight. And I go, oh, there's a band here in town that I really like. Let's go see him over at BJ's. And so we go there. And the singer actually says, I could steal that fiddle player right now. There was 3 guys in the band that he said, I could steal those guys right now. And he goes, but if they got a new lead singer, they would go far. Well, quite literally, I think 8 years later, the only guy left in the band is the lead singer. He's nominated for a Grammy for vocal performance, and he lost to the Eagles.
Wow. Yeah. Local talent, guys,
Yeah.
right from this region.
Yeah. And then Tennille Towns, another one, does amazing things in the community. But I was working again at CJXX. And because I was a former announcer and then I was into sales, anything that was music related got steered to me. And they go, there's this 15-year-old girl. She's doing a fundraiser. Can you chat with her? And so I take her in the boardroom, and it's only her, not her mom. No, just a 15-year-old girl. And she's telling me that she wants to do a concert fundraiser of songwriters to raise money for Sunrise House here in Grande Prairie. I was so charmed by this young lady that how the radio works is you need a financial investment. We didn't do anything without a financial investment. But what you do is say you've got $500. Well, then we'll match that $500 and we'll do $500 worth of talk. For the first time, and it was probably 10 or 12 years at that point, I just said, we're in. You don't need to give me a dime. And I will deal with my boss if I have to. And anyway, I didn't have to deal with the boss. They supported it. But this dynamic young lady was so amazing. And over the course of her career now with this Big Hearts for Big Kids, and that was number one, I think she's raised $2.5 million. And it started when she was 15. And the joke at the time was here, most kids, 15 years old, can't organize a sock drawer. Yeah. And she's organizing a concert. And so I love being part of that story. Much like, again, with Emerson Drive and Brad Mates, I was there virtually on day one, and I got to see what happened and those kind of things. Erin J. Goodwin, another one, but slightly different. So with Tennille, she's won a number of Junos and Country Music Awards. Erin J. Goodwin was another. He's won a Juno, I think, or Canadian Country Music Award. Yeah, Canadian Country Music Award for Songwriter of the Year. But again, he's 15, 16 years old, and he's working as a work experience student at a store in Fairview that a good buddy of mine owned, and he sold guitars. And so, but he wanted to work in that environment. And so I just remember him being in there, and my buddy Brent and I are having coffee in the back, and there's this kid grabs a guitar off the wall and keeps her playing the opening lines of a Dwight Yoakam song. And it's like half an hour of that. So my buddy does not remember this, nor does Aaron, but it's in my mind forever. But Brent comes out and goes, "Hey, Dwight, put down the guitar and grab a broom and sweep the floor."
Oh, goodness.
But anyway.
That's changed today.
Yeah, so he is, again, 15, 16 years old, and again, now winning awards for songwriting. I just love seeing that, of the growth in people, and human creativity excites me more than anything, and I just love seeing that. But Carol Ann Dawn Johnson's another one that was born in Grande Prairie, raised in the area, but her and Tennille at various points have rented my gallery a couple times, and I just I love being part of that and just immersing myself around creative people.
Yeah, totally. And what do you think is the future for our region, our community, in terms of art? Like, where do you see us going in the future?
It will only continue to get better. People crave it. And I actually had somebody ask me recently, why does Grande Prairie produce so many amazing artists in so many diverse ways? And as odd as this sounds, but I think it's very real, is our winters are so long and dark that in order to keep our sanity and in order to keep doing something, we find creative outlets over the winters that we can take part in that make us feel good, be it music, be it in creating art, creating something, basically a bridge to get us to spring, because our summers are heavenly. They're amazing, and they're worth battling through the winters to get to. So it's over those winter months that people seek to be creative and seek to find better things to do rather than mindlessly, previously TV or death scrolling on your phone. What are you going to do? And so there's a certain incubation there that being trapped in a house makes you seek out these, and I think that's why.
That's so interesting. I never thought of it like that. That's the first time anyone said that to me, but yeah, that's interesting to think about because it is like you go to work, it's dark. You go home, it's dark. And it's like, where do you find the light? Like, where do you find that creative energy? And so, yeah, that could be the reason, Grant. That's really cool. So, yeah, is there anything else you want people to know about you? Anything else that you wanted to share that we didn't quite get to today?
Well, you and I had chatted in the past about architecture, and we could go down that road.
Yeah.
But I don't think you have a 3-hour show.
Well, no, but I'd love to hear. The one question I wanted to ask is like, what are some of the buildings in town that you really admire the architecture of?
Oh, well, that's real easy. Because I did actually 2 postcards in my gallery. I used to have people come in and say, hey, I want something that is artistic, uniquely Grande Prairie, and affordable. And well, it doesn't exist. So I made it exist. So using the same concept that CN and CP Rail used to do before cameras were invented, they would hire artists to go on the train and they would paint places. Like they'd go to Banff, go to wherever, and they would paint these as travel posters. Then TWA did it with their destination. So they would go to Paris and Rome and wherever, and they would have these travel posters that really featured amazing places. And so using that same concept and similar styles, actually, I hired an artist, and normally I have one graphic designer. He does all my work, but he actually worked at both of the places, and I thought he's too close. So I hired a graphic designer out of England, of all places, because he could do the style I wanted, but I wanted him to be fascinated with the buildings because he had never seen anything like it before, especially in England. So I wanted to portray it in somewhat of a fascinating way. So, of course, here in Grande Prairie, we have Northwestern Polytechnic.
Yeah.
And it was designed by Douglas Cardinal. The original part, there's 2 parts to it, but the original Cardinal portion, including the college theater, is amazing.
Oh, it's incredible. There's something about that space.
It really is, and that was Douglas Cardinal's first major job. He eventually went on to do the Museum of Man in Ottawa, but also the Museum of the American Indian in Washington, D.C. was the last Smithsonian vacant spot and next to the Capitol building, and that was done by an Indigenous architect from Alberta.
Wow.
And the very first major building that he did was right here in Grande Prairie, and so we're very fortunate to have that. And last I heard, he's still around, he's in his 80s, living in Ottawa, but the last I heard is that his most proud space is the college theater.
Wow.
That we have here in Grande Prairie. Now, one of the things that I'd mentioned too is when you go past the theater and down the hallway, there are times where I feel stressed or overwhelmed and I just need to be in a creative space. So I will go down that hallway and it's 3 stories high. And I don't know if you've ever been to Moline Canyon in Jasper in winter, but you walk down in the bottom of the canyon and you walk on the ice and the cliff walls weave and go, and it's so spectacular. And I feel that when I go to the college and I walk down in that area where I feel like I'm in Moline Canyon, but architecturally, and the energy flow in there is amazing, and it washes away that stress and allows me to see clearer and declutter my mind so that, again, all of the things that are overwhelming me and coming at me at the same time sort themselves out. And so I just stand there like it's a place that's magic. And so architectural spaces do that for me.
Well, thank you so much for being on my show, Grant. It really, really means a lot.
And likewise, again, you know I'm a fan of yours, Mariah, and I love seeing your successes.
Yeah, I always love geeking out over art with you. So I really appreciate it.
Likewise.
So this is the end of our show. Please subscribe on YouTube and Spotify, and we'll see you next time.